Well, welcome to the second part of the Motivating Painters video review for January. If you're not sure what all this is about, well, thank you for clicking on this video anyway. If you want, you can check out part one, and that'll fill you in on all the details and how you can get involved. But for now, we have a bunch of lovely looking minis to look at, so we're going to get started straight away on the review with Gary Hassani's Angel figurine that he submitted for us. So no particular feedback, just looking for what what to work on. So the number one thing that stands, first of all, stuff I like, it's a really lovely color palette. I love the kind of the blue to purple in the wings with the white at the top and the kind of more reddish purple for the cloak and then the gold for the armor. It's a really nice kind of it's some sort of triadic scheme, but it works very well. So good choices on your paints there. And the kind of olive golden skin kind of ties it all in very well. So like 10 out of 10 really for color choices from me. I'd say first thing is do the eyes because it looks well, doesn't have the eyes done. If you're like not super confident with it, like this kind of figure would look cool with just like solid like yellow eyes. Like it's not a real person, it's an angel. So just like kind of glowing, not even glowing, just like flat colored eyes would be good. Or there's plenty of tutorials you can look up for just painting eyes. It is a bit of a bugbear for people. Once you get used to it, it's actually like one of the most satisfying things because it's just a couple of dots and it makes the model just immediately kind of sing. The face just stands out straight away. Other than that, I'd say the metals, like the gold you've used, it's very nice. I like the way you've got two different kind of tones. But you can have more shading in it. You can kind of see, especially like the recesses, even just a wash to kind of define all the sides. Because metallic paint reads it kind of reads as the scale that it is. You know, it reflects light as if it was whatever size. I'd say this is like a 75. Well, kind of hard to tell, but it's not going to look like if you took you know, an actual gold panel and shrank it down, it wouldn't look like that paint. So you need to artificially add shadows. You can also do highlights, usually using kind of silver paints. But particularly shadows in around all the edges, kind of underneath that spherical shape that she has on things, and just in between all the panels, and it'll make it look a lot kind of crisper and also give it more kind of detail and realism to it. You could maybe as well have like a wash, particularly an oil wash would work very well for the wings
Mm.
because it's a lovely color transition going on them, but there isn't as much kind of definition in between inside of each feather. Like you know, you got those that vein up the middle and then the barbules coming out. Just a very light kind of wash, like a pin wash with oil paints, would bring that out like super easily and super effectively. Looks like you got a little bit of your gold paint on there as well, coming off of the armor. So just clean that up with your base tone. It'd be kind of annoying, obviously, because you've got this gradient, but like actually just match it by eye. No one's gonna be able to tell once you put it in, especially if you do that first and then put the shading down on top of it, because that's gonna kind of blend everything together a little bit. Um, and I like the base as well. I'm not a fan of kind of sculpted smoke. I think you've done a good job of making it look like it is smoke or clouds or whatever. It might be nice to have a little bit difference in terms of the color with the base. Like if the stone wasn't wasn't sort of bluish, just because it's all kind of blending in together with the figure as well. Like I think it looks nice, but it might be nice to have just like a little poppy element down there of something a bit different. Because kind of wonder like why like just get rid of the stone because I mean the smoke looks fine as it is. But I think it's a really nice looking figure. Not sure exactly what it's from, but it looks great. It looks like kind of reminds me of something from like some sort of Magic the Gathering art style. Um, and I really like what you've done with it, especially the kind of the leathery fabrics and the color scheme. I think work really really well. Jim, do you want to add anything on there?
Yeah, sure. Agreeing with an awful lot of that. I think the blue is very, very nice, as Matt said. I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, the structure of the wings definitely needs bringing out more. So this is quite a big model. So what I do sometimes is because they're sort of overlaying, top goes over the underneath one. If you're using like a wash or a shade or whatever it is to get in here to darken these up, you can actually turn the model upside down so that it collects against those edges. Because obviously, if you were to put it in this way, it's all going to run downward, and it's not going to help you out very much. So try turning it upside down. That's a nice little trick sometimes to get some darker tones up here to sort of structure the wings. As Matt said, with I think he said, sorry, with this skin, I would just probably push highlights on that a little bit. The face looks quite unfinished, if I'm honest. So there's some nice tones in there and colours, but definitely having a go at the eyes, but also just push these highlights more, because it's kind of highlighted the same as like the legs or the chest. So I mean, you can see it here, just how few values there are in the skin, and down on the legs. So you could definitely push some more shadows up here, bring some more highlights on top of those muscle structures on the knees, stuff like that, just to help it stand out a little bit more. And then just defining edges, really. So as Matt said before, like running washes in for the metals, but just everywhere else as well. So whenever two surfaces meet, like this bit of cloth that's going down her thigh, like that should be a really dark occlusion shadow there. More between the fingers where folds and other textures meet each other. It's done quite nicely on these little scales, actually, so proves that it can be done. You can do it. So just a little bit more of that would be nice. Then what else did I have? Oh yeah, the whites that are down here on her legs, these straps, just look a little bit like one color. So with white, start with like a cold grey and then start highlighting it up to pure white and save pure white as the highest highlight. That will really, really help give it the contrast that it needs. It is a tricky colour to do, white, but starting off with a cold grey and then building up from there is a really nice way of going about it, and gives you that. It'll automatically give you, all you need to do is just add smaller amounts of white to it to bring it up. And then, as I say, whitest white for the highest highlight, and you should be good. But otherwise, yeah, I really enjoyed this. As Matt said, it's a really cool scheme. I love what you did with the clouds as well. These green little gem things that are down here, also very cool. So yeah, nice submission. Thank you very much, Gary. Hope that helps, and hope to see you again in the future. So we're going to move up now to Beelkins. So mini diorama, which was also a gift for the brother. Tried something inspired by Frank Miller's art, but I also wanted to practice monochromatic value sketching. Looking forward to some feedback on the overall composition, atmosphere, and potential for future improvement. So overall composition we'll start with. So I think monochromatically, I think you've done a really nice job on this. It's difficult to do, but you've got a really nice level of contrast to it. The only criticism I'd have with contrast is that there's more highlight on the belly than there is on the face. It's a bit too shaded, if that makes any sense. So I would highlight the top of the chest and the shoulder a little bit more. I know that her chin is sort of tipped down and that would shade her a little bit, but this is artistic impression. At the minute, like, you've got this cut here with the blood, which is really, really nice. Use of the blood and down on the sword and floor, by the way. That's all really cool. But just this level of highlight is just bringing the attention like away from what should be the focal point. So yeah, I think just toning this down a little bit and brightening up the tops of her body and shoulder would really, really help. Nice job with the hair. That looks cool. It's got this nice little sheen effect going onto it. So that's nice as well. I had down here for the pattern, pattern or texture. I know clearly, obviously, how small this is, but I'm not sure whether this is supposed to be a pattern or texture. If it's a pattern, I think it's a cool pattern and it works. If it's texture, sadly, I think you've got to go littler or have the texture down like one sort of flow of highlight, as it were, rather than the same amount of texture sort of all over it. So yeah, that's a tricky one, but I think it's selling to me as a pattern, to be honest, and I quite like it because you've got dots in there as well. So I think it's supposed to be a pattern. And then what was the other thing? The tree that's to the side of it, because it's mini diorama, maybe just a little bit too big. I'm not sure. What do you think, Matt? I mean, it's off to the side. It's not obscuring her. Is that big enough?
It's all right. I think in terms of the base, though, the base is all kind of too bright for me because, I mean, I know this is very annoying to do when you have kind of monochrome scheme, when you have a base and it's all completely flat. Like in Moonlight, everything would just be stark black or stark white. But you have to get a bit creative about it. Like, so I would have definitely had the underside of the tree be way darker and like between her feet be way darker, so that she's kind of like spotlit. Either you could do it either way. You could have her be like in a shaft of light because she's in the forest and there's shadows there or whatever. So you do a fade out along all the plants because you think about the overall the value of the scene. So you want it to get darker towards the outside. That'll tell you kind of one thing. Or you can do the reverse where it's kind of like bright around the edges, and then you have her cast shadow in between her feet, and then she stands out in the middle. Because I do like all the elements that are on there, but I think that they're not painted. It is harder to paint like ground in this kind of style. I'll give you that. But um, you know, you can just utilize it creatively. Like so, think of like how they used to do shadows in video games in the 90s, where it's just like a circle under your figure. Like that would totally work for this because there is no kind of real dimensionality to it. Like the soil under her, so like invent a kind of shadow for it, and definitely have like the grass tufts I'd have just generally darker because they're kind of running a similar value to the whole, like all the bits of her. Um, Also, what else do I have down here? Yeah, I felt the same thing about the patterning on the dress. I wasn't sure as well if it was meant to be like hatching, like in comic books they have like hatching, but it's normally dark lines. I think if it's texture, it should be more erratic and smaller, as Jim said. And if it is a pattern, like some bits of it, especially the X's, look like super neat and tidy, but it kind of all needs to be like that. And it's a little bit weird that the sheaths for her swords have a really similar pattern on them, where on that it looks almost like a stylized NMM thing. Those sheaths are all like they couldn't be textured because they're like incredibly smoothly lacquered. So yeah, again, it was just one of those things. Like it looks good, I like it, but it's hard to tell what your intention was exactly as an outside observer. Um, I think the use of color is like really good. I like how obviously it's like the Sin City kind of thing, but the elements you picked out is like the blood on her and the blood on the sword, and it's dripping into the ground, which is class. And then her lips as well, which is a great way to bring in focus, but it's also telling us a whole story there where you've emphasized kind of like the beauty and the violence, which is, the two parts that kind of make up this whole scene. So like just that tiny splash of color, it's doing so much. And it tells us why everything else is black and white, which is great. On the hair, I think you did do a good job. Obviously, again, value sketching, doing everything black and white, but this can be very challenging. I'd just be a little bit careful what kind of hair this is meant to be because it's very light. Whereas I'd imagine she's meant, like, if she doesn't look like she has black hair, for instance, if you put a color on that, all the white areas would immediately be colored in. Whereas if she had very dark hair, there'd probably be smaller lines to it. But again, it's a kind of stylistic thing. How would they have done that in a comic book? Kind of hard to say, especially putting it into a 3D thing. Comic books, they often have the hair be like just a kind of an area, and then maybe do a bit of hatching in on top of it. Um, Anything else? I think it's very readable, and it's a great exercise to try out. So fair play for challenging yourself to do it. And I'd say, like your brother, if I was your brother, I'd be dead happy with that as a gift. So, good work. Keep it up. Hope that was of help to you, Bilkins. We go to Ross Dibben, some Space Dwarves. Apparently they're his own scheme. What's a codex? Don't even know. These guys are cool.
A what?
Space Dwarves, Votans? I don't know. Is it Wotan? Who's to say? They're like, yeah, I like them. I especially just love the dude with the sunglasses. Like that's just like it's got that class like Duke Nukem kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and it's nice as well that you have that like the blue sunglasses match the blue kind of eyepieces and everything on everyone else. I think the scheme works nicely. They're green and orange, so obviously I'm gonna have to approve of that. Um, there is a little bit like you kind of got yellow tending towards orange in some other places, like the guy's beard and the gold is quite orangey as well. That's a little bit what's the word? A little bit of a clash for me, just because they're so similar. You wanna if you had it as yellow, I'd make it more of a pale, kind of washed out yellow, and the gold more of a yellowy gold or something. Or make it more orange because I'm not sure whether you don't really want your scheme to be like green, yellow, orange, and blue, because it's probably a little bit too much. And then the orange, I think the orange looks really, really good. And the way you've highlighted the orange on like the guy with the closed mask thing, where it kind of highlights up to more of a whitish color, that looks really good. And it's got that kind of artificial look to it, like it's some sort of ceramic-y material or something. So I prefer the orange to the yellow. Um, so yeah, and the golds in general, I'd say could do with just like you could even just dry brush them with a more yellow gold and or white to bring out some of the details as well, because they got a nice shade put into them, but they could do with a little bit of a highlight on top of them as well, especially as they're kind of used on backpacks and the important characters and stuff. Lightning axe, very cool. If you wanted another trick, if you want that to kind of bed down a bit more, you can do a blue glaze over top of it, and then do the lines in again, depending on like how important this character is. I'm not entirely sure. But you can kind of do that infinitely, and you get like it looks like this kind of 3D effective lightning. Instead, they do it in airbrushing. It's like for cars, but it looks pretty cool. It's definitely selling that kind of power weapon effect. And again, I like how you've used the same color there and on his like little jewel thing to do with the axe. Um, I wasn't 100% certain about the leaf litter on the bases. Like it's birch seeds, just a couple of tufts. It looks kind of weird because like the bases are so gray, and then the tufts are so, or not the tufts, the leaves are so natural looking. Like they looks like, oh, it's just been a recent fall in the forest, but they're on this moon planet. And then some of them, they're very yellow. It almost looks like tons of banana peels, like in Mario Kart or something like that. And I'm just like, I get like it's an alien world or something, but it's kind of weird that like there's so many of the pieces. The guy with the tufts, it works better because it kind of looks like he's on like a rocky outcropping. But some of the other guys, it just looks like they're in a desert that had fake leaves just dumped in it, or real fake leaves. But so you could maybe try burying them. You could make them look a bit dustier. You could do a whole lot of stuff. I like the actual desert basis. It looks like it's some sort of mining colony on a moon or something. To be honest, I think it might just look better without the leaf litter there on top of it. But it's definitely a really cool scheme. I like how you've kind of got some directional lighting on some of the guys as well, especially the leader dude, and his plasma pistol is looking pretty nice. So yeah, I'd say it'd be a grand old scheme to use in your army. And, hope it works out well for you. Jim, do you have anything you wanted to add on there?
Yeah, plasma thing looks wicked. I was enjoying that very, very much. It just looks like in some places the paint's gone on really, really smooth. So taking this leader as an example. So in some places like the green armor, it looks like it's gone on really, really smooth, and that's lovely jubbly. But then like around the rock, like some of these edge highlights and stuff just looks really thick paint, and also on the face there's loads of texture, like unwanted texture on the face. So I'm not sure, not painted any of these, so I don't know. Doesn't look like it's a sculpting problem. It just looks like it's gone on. He's got like a cauliflower ear and loads of colours and stuff all over his face. It just forgive me if it's not, but it just looks like the paint's gone on a bit thick in places, not everywhere. Because like I say, like this effect that's going on with the coil is brilliant. The green armor has got loads of value to it, and it will smooth transitions, and it's all lovely jubbly. So, and there was another instance of it as well, like some of the edge highlights on the orange are just looking like they've gone on a little bit thick. So just watch out for that one. But other than that, no, everything that Matt said, I agree with. There's some more thick paint. There's like brush strokes on the edge of this weapon here, sort of thing. So it's just kind of general consistency, but I think you've separated it well. There's good values on stuff. The scheme is cool. I do think the leaves are also a little bit of a distraction, if I'm brutally honest. They are very, very bright compared to what's going up on above them. So yeah, I'm not really too sold on the basing. This one looks better, as Matt said, with all the other stuff going on. But just the sort of cohesion across all of them is lacking a little bit. I think letting them down. But if these are for the tabletop and stuff, I think they look pretty wicked, man. So yeah, nice one, Ross. Thank you very much. All right, now we've got Jord Murray with House Fett Imperial Knights 40k, Boba Fett themed after the Book of Fett series. So I had a little spin through these videos, and they they don't really give an awful lot of detail, other than the fact that you need a round of applause for painting so many of these things. So well done, Jord. That's really awesome that you've dedicated so much time and effort to this. This blue and green light thing that you've got going on, and this one looks sick. And he's massive as well. And you've done a really nice job of hiding all the wires and batteries and stuff. I couldn't actually pick anything out on here. So you did an ace job there. Look at that. That is a lot of fun. That is really, really cool. So yeah, enjoying that. So you haven't really asked for any particular feedback, and there's only like one picture to really settle on. So guessing these are all for tabletop and playing. These lights are really cool in this one as well. But I like what you've done with the scheme. I think in general, they're painted very nicely. So you've got some good separation going on the panels. The metals could do with a little bit more in the way of shading and highlighting, if you wanted to. It looks like you've done some very, very gentle weathering in places, so that's cool, like around the rivets and in some crevices and cracks and stuff. So enjoying that. Really like this like spray paint effect motif that's gone on the front of him. It's used the space very, very well. It looks like it was done roughly by soldiers rather than, you know, an artisan painter that's done a spiffingly great job of getting everything symmetrical and crisp lines. You know, it looks like some guys have just like commandeered this thing, if you like, and they've gone up with some cans of paint and just blasted their motif on it. It's blown out the edges. It's running down. It just sells perfectly. So I really, really enjoyed that. So great work on that. But yeah, they look great as a unit together. The basing's really, really cool. Just be careful not to build it up too high in front of them in some places. There's an awful lot going on the bases sometimes, so just watch out for that. I think it's fine because, you know, these things are big and they're obviously for the table, so they're going to blend in. Just watch out that they don't get too high in front of the mini, if that makes sense. So like this one's got probably the best or worst example of it. That one there on the left, there's just an awful lot on that base. This one back here is much better. That one back there. So yeah, just watch out for those. I'm going to replay this again just to get more of an idea. But I think, you know, cohesiveness across all of them looks great. I like the variation to like the shoulder panels and the weapons that you've got going on. So yeah, I think you did a nice job with this, Jody. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, totally. Like I think like you didn't need to tell me what this was. I knew exactly. It's like, oh, it's Imperial Knights painted like Boba Fett. Cool. Yeah, great. Checks out. 100%. Lighting, super impressive. Fair play on that. Having it like it's almost like art reflecting life, where you have to actually do wiring on your fictional robot thing. And thanks for putting in the videos as well, because sometimes a lot of time in having LEDs and stuff, it looks not great in photos because it overexposes and stuff, but it looks like way better when you can see it kind of more true to life, like in the video there. So in terms of what you could do to make these take them up to the next level, I think maybe you have some weathering on here, but I think like Star Wars and deserty stuff, you know, it kind of has a lot of weathering. We tend to think of it as like if you look at it like, you know, the Millennium Falcon and stuff like that, and Boba Fett, like his gear is always wrecked. So if you had like rust streaks coming out of these some of these paint, like all these bolts and stuff, you could have a few bolts coming off. Looks like you got some grime around it, but I think it could have like bullet holes and chips and all that kind of stuff, and that looks cool as well when you have the spray painted on like additional iconography, when you have like chips going through it and then it's like rusted in places, and then it just adds an extra layer of kind of detail that just brings everything together without actually requiring a huge amount of hassle. Like having like around the hatch on the top, you could have a bunch of like rusty grime and stuff, and it's very, very appropriate for the for both Warhammer and for Star Wars as well. Um, I'd avoid using. It looks like in a couple places you got a very flat white on things. I'd always try to use an off white, just because like pure white tends to look kind of fake and not great on your minis. Especially, I think one of the pieces has like this skull from like Gardens from Moor or something, which is just plain white and it's really eye catching and it's part of the base and it looks like a piece of white painted plastic. So I'd either weather it heavily, or I'd probably go like for like buff from Vallejo, or just some. I don't think I ever use actually white anymore. Just some sort of off white. the whole thing is that it'll read as white because when you look outside, if you were actually taking a photo of, the world around you, most of the things that are white are actually just a very, very pale color. If you were to like extract a pixel out of them. And that's what you want to have in your minis, where like, okay, if he's on this desert planet, there's this yellow sun, so all the white stuff is going to have a slight yellow tinge to it, or it's going to be stained with dust or whatever. Whereas having something look like, that flat white, it's like when they Photoshop people's teeth in ads to be white, it immediately looks like kind of off. Um, but I think, yeah, you could totally weather over that and it'd work really well. And I think they look really good as it is. It looks kind of lived in and everything. So super cool, really awesome take on these guys. Like really great work with the lights and everything. Nice paint job. Good idea. Thanks for submitting. Cheers. Okay, I'm gonna go up to Jonathan Eka, doing Alucard from Castlevania. Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards, just in case you didn't know.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's very on the note. Like, it's like if your name was Noel and you named your son Leon, except for Leon's actually a name. Okay,
Hannah.
so trying to create a subtle gradient on the face. It's more difficult than a high contrast gradient. Yep. And first attempt to paint a face using the airbrush. Cool. Sword OSL is excessive in my opinion. Yep. Not sure how strong it should be. Okay, so first of all, we do the face. I think it looks good. I think it's got that kind of smoothness. Like Alucard's got a very kind of effeminate, like he's meant to be a beautiful man. Um, so soft is a good way of doing it. But obviously you want it to be quite pale as well, because he's a vampire, that kind of thing. I think the eyes are really well painted, but they're not drawing attention the way I'd like them to. Um, he has yellow eyes, which are quite similar to everything around him, but there's no like the light. If there is a light in there, it's not white enough. That wants to be like your brightest bright point is like a dot reflection in the eyes, because that's what the light in your eyes is. It's a literal reflection of the light source, so it is the whitest thing you can see in any scene. And also it just makes your character look much more alive. Like in films, they shine lights on people's eyes to get that there if it's not showing up from the environmental stuff lights that are there already. When you're doing airbrushing faces, one nice cool thing to do is if you can roughly apply loads of color with your paintbrush, and then you can smooth it all out with the airbrush in like multiple passes, which is a good way of getting that like nice kind of airbrushed look, while still having a lot of color in there. I think you got a decent amount of color, and you could have a little bit more. Uh, for example, like um, say like having like the top, like this front of his cheekbone and the top of his cheekbone are the exact same, whereas obviously they're different. But again, it gets very very hard when you're trying to have lots of color, lots of contrast, lots of smoothness. So I think it looks actually very good, to be honest with you. You could maybe bring the lips out a little bit as well. Again, it's kind of true to the character, but just for the purposes of the viewer's interest, having a more saturated color somewhere on the face is generally a good idea. It's why people wear lipstick. And then the OSL is beyond excessive. So if that's what you're going for, good job. But it's like crazily bright, like so much brighter than the ambient light source in the room. It almost looks like that part of him. He's like stepped through a door into this like blazing red sunlight, or like a furnace or something. Or even in some case, from one of the angles, it almost looks like there's like a big light under his cloak, and it's like shining out, like when you put a torch behind your hand. So that'd be cool if that's what you're going for, but obviously it isn't. I think the colors are all really good. I really like this like hot metal when it's kind of going, the gradient on the sword. But everything is far too bright. And the reason is because you were saying how would the light interact with the cloth and the clothing, and the answer is well, not very much, because he's wearing a black cloak. So like black absorbs light. Um, so if you look at the figure, it looks like to me like you've kind of gloss coated it and it's black, which is fine. But see the way on his arm, there's like it's mostly black, and then there's like a white patch here, and there's a white line here, and there's a white bit there. That's what the glow would look like, but in red, because that light that you're seeing on the model is the light in your room being reflected by. a glossy black surface. So it should have like little patches of this intense red. I really like the color, but like most of it should still actually be black. Um, and probably like the intensity on the foot, like the leg part is shoe, is a bit more realistic. Realistic, a bit more makes more sense in that like his coat is casting a shadow on his leg, and then it's lit up by the sword. Whereas actually the bits on his of his coat would be lit by the ambient light for the most part. So like it doesn't make really any sense for it to be anything like this strong on OSL from this sword, even if it's like literally was just a big neon light, it would still not quite do that. Um, I'd watch out as well for the directionality of it in a couple of places. Like he got a light on top of his hand, whereas the sword blade is in front of his hand. So like the light would have to go like off. This is a sword, right? It'd have to go off it, then come back and hit me on the hand. And like light doesn't do that. Also, this isn't a sword. Um, but yeah, so like the top of his hand, like the side of his fingers that face the sword can have a bit of light on them. But even then, it wouldn't be that much because like the sword is mostly radiating light out to the sides. Um, so yeah, I think it looks really cool, but it's just this would make a lot more sense if the entire rest of the model was like painted as if it was in pitch blackness, but and this sword was like the light source in the room. But obviously it isn't. So yeah, you could tone it back a lot, and it would sell more like an OSL thing. You could go for a more stylized kind of thing. I know in the games he does stuff where he like does he change red when he uses a certain kind of attack. So you could go for that if that's what you're interested in. I think it's a really cool looking model anyway. It's going to look pretty like striking up on your shelf or wherever you're going to put it anyway. But in terms of like realistic OSL, yeah, definitely tone it down and be careful. Like imagine where kind of the straight lines would come out of. And also just the light should interact with the fabric the same way that your actual light is interacting with it. Would be my best advice. It is tricky though. OSL very hard. Painting black fabrics very hard. Putting them together 4 times harder. Uh, but great work. Face is looking great. Definitely true to the character. Pretty cool even to be trying this kind of wacky things on the figure. Um, and again, like I think the colors and everything that you've done for it look gorgeous, but it is just a bit too much. Jim?
Yes, very much agreed. Well said on all of the things, Mr. Bran. So I just wanted to say again how on the leg it works best because it's so much subtler an effect than what's on the coat. So on the coat, the sculpt's helping you out a lot here. It's giving you folds that are in shadow of the lighting that you've used. So you can see just here, like you've got this high highlight and then you've got this area of dark shadow. That's the only place where you would want to be putting in like less than this amount of red that's on her leg would go in that shadow. Okay, it wouldn't affect the where the highlight is. So you've done it over the entire area regardless of where it's an area of highlight or shadow. So you've got to imagine that you're sitting here with a torch and shining it on here, and it would only highlight slightly in red where these folds are in the fabric. Yeah, that's the way you want to go about it. Same for on the glove, only in areas that are already deeply shadowed, which is why it works down here so much. Yeah. So aside from that, then I think you did a great job on the face too. I just thought that you could maybe make the definitely put the light in, as Matt said, definitely. But it just looks like the pupils want to be a bit darker. I'm not sure whether he's supposed to have like reddish kind of pupils because I've not played the game or anything. But it just looks like they need slightly and like darker lines like around the sockets of the eye, sort of where the white meets it. It just needs a little bit more definition, a little more deepness into it, to help the eyes really stand out. But I think you did an immense job on the skin. You can tell that there's a lot of colours and tones in there, very, very softly blended together. It's great airbrush work. You could maybe go a little bit deeper with the shadows on like the tops of the forehead. That would be really cool. But I think you've got lovely tones going on here. And then also, I think you did a pretty stellar job picking up all of the details on the leather jacket as well, all the little buckles and braces and trims and all of those things. So that's all really nice and cleanly done as well. So yeah, for the most part, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Hope to see you again in coming months. So moving on to Max Pombert now. Practice run for a Bloodthirster I'm working on. May try to take some better pics. Did that happen? Open comments? No. No further pictures. Okay, cool. So haven't really asked for anything in specific. So what did I have for this? It's quite a lot going on color-wise. It's pretty busy. But I think you're just about getting away with it because it's so busy up here, like sculpt-wise, it's difficult for like the eye really to settle anywhere. You've got a lot of elements, a lot of details, which have all been cleanly painted, it must be said. But then like the orange is like, whoa, just really, really, really overpowering. So I think the main I wouldn't say issue with it, but I'd say like a bit of feedback, like be careful of going for such a strong color over such a large area of the model. Like we've said it quite a few times that big old beastie boys like this look so much better if they've got multiple tones to them, like 2 tones, so you can have like
is what I say.
yes, wearing pads. But like yeah, make his like the bottom half or like his back, or you know, like some pattern variation to them, makes them look so much better. You've got a bit of the islanding going on with the skin as well, which is where you've kind of run from your darkest shadow to highest highlight on every single muscle structure, pretty much. So watch out for that in future. Reserve like the darkest shadows for like in deep folds that are nowhere near the light. And I think generally you could just highlight the top of it a lot more to help it have a little bit more contrast. What else did I have? Separation. So when we're looking here and like this center bit, I think it would help if everything was like a dark oil wash would be really, really good for this, just to get in and help define all of the edges and help things stand apart from each other, because there's an awful lot going on. But I like what you've done with the goop and gore and guts. That's good splattering up here. That's selling really, really nicely. All of these vile looking appendixes that he's got going on here, all suitably bloodied. We can tell what he's been up to lately. You could maybe get away with a little bit more on the base, blood-wise. The tufts look kind of a bit stuck on, so it's fallen foul of the whole. We know where that came from. That came off a sticker pad and it went on the base. So, yeah, that tells that story. So, use washes, use dry brushing, change the colours up, and that will really help those to settle in. I like the use of colour on the base, though. You've got a really nice, like, soft palette of these, like, tan and sandy colours going on, which is really, really nice. So I think you've got some good variation there, and the colours in the plants themselves. But again, I think they're just stuck on. But just like the tufts, and we always say it with tufts, you know, it's too easy. It's too easy to just take them off and stick them on, man. Take them one step further. But yeah, other than that, blue and orange is a great colour combo, and I like what you did with the bony things at the top. Little bit of spatter up there, not too much, but you know, you can tell he's getting really stuck into whoever he's been dismembering. So yeah, it all looks pretty good from that respect. And I think you may have sculpted that bloody droplet thing, maybe. I'm not sure. I've not seen this guy before, so
No, that's added on. Yeah.
He's added that on with the old. Whatever it is, when I did this, I used dental floss and glue, and just slowly built up super glue until the drip got bigger and bigger and bigger, or something like that. It looks cool. However you've done it, it looks very, 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 very good. So yeah, thank you, Max. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah. So yeah, I really like the base. I think it's very like the way you have the different textures and different kind of plants. It's very like naturalistic-y kind of looking. But yeah, the tufts are the most kind of artificial looking thing. Think about like, why would there be three separate patches of grass just like growing in a line. Like that doesn't really happen. Like think a little bit about why and where you're putting these things down, because it looks really cool with the amount of variety you got going on. But it looks like you kind of just spread it evenly everywhere. Um, but yeah, I really like to use the crackle paste, the different like texture medium. So cool work in the basing. So blue and orange, yeah, very good complementary scheme. Problem is that it doesn't leave you much room for other things because you've already got like the maximum amount of color contrast. So adding in a third color, like a big vibrant magenta, is uh, difficult
Problematic.
on the eyes, difficult to balance as well. Like I love the gore on his hand thing. I think this model is very overwrought with details, but I think that looks really cool with his hand mouth and all the blood coming out of it. Um, I think even if you just made like some of the little bony tentacle thingies more pale magenta, then it would have you're basically reducing the amount of that color because there's more white in it. Um, or yeah, just have to think about how you're going to distribute these things. Like what and why are some of his bones? He's got the skulls are all plain blue. Yeah, it is a difficult kind of beast because there's so much stuff going on with it. I do like that you did the blue kind of symbol of corn and the blue on his crotch guard thing as well. Like that works because you're conserving your palette in there. Um, but it's just you don't have much room given that you've already started with like opposite colors, if that makes sense. Maybe if you had the magenta worked in more, like the orange was the highlight and his skin was this kind of reddish color mostly, and then the bony bits could go to like a bone color for their highlights. But yeah, just sure have a think about it. And also when you're doing your bloodthirster, this guy has very noticeable gaps in
Mm.
most places. So I'd fill those in advance. Kind of can be a bit fiddly depending on what kit you're doing, but for something like a Bloodthirster, it's totally worth it for the your centerpiece army, like a model. People are going to pick them up, want to look at them. They're going to see those things when they do. I like the gradient in the blue. I think that's kind of cool. But again, you've got like I like how it works together. Um, and the mouth tentacle thingy also class, and the gore I also really like. So yeah, love to see a few more of your models if you want to pop them in, see how it works out for the Bloodthirster, and best of luck and happy painting in the future. Thanks for submitting there.
Quick shout out for liquid green stuff for gap filling stuff like this. Really, it's in a pot. You don't have to mix it or anything. You just get a brush, dip it in the green stuff, slop it on the gap, wait for it to shrink, do it again, and then sand it down. And it's so easy, and it would fix this stuff in a jiffy. So yeah, if you haven't already heard of that, give that a look, Max. Liquid green stuff, and hope that helps. Sorry, Matt.
And you can do it after priming as well, because sometimes these things you don't notice until after you've primed it that there's like a big hole or whatever, just because it ends up being kind of like highlighted by the paints. Okay, John Israel. Want to do dynamic lighting on this infinity person. Having her backlit over her left shoulder with the shadow of the ground. Not sure I pulled off either of those things. How to improve that and improve on the mini in general. First of all, I think the mini looks great. It's definitely nailing the infinity ultra bright future high contrast kind of look to it. I think the white on the gun could have more run, like it's all one color, but it should definitely be like a gradient of a darker white to a lighter white. But like even like the high contrast and the yellow on her cape thing and the kind of non-metallic metal-y looking stuff on the mask and on her back plates. Like I think it looks really good. It looks exactly like I don't know if this is for like O12. It's a while since I played this game, but it looks perfectly. Oh, Aleph maybe. Perfectly in universe, and that's a very difficult style to paint. And these are super difficult models to paint because they are tiny. True scale 28mm, I believe. As for the cast shadow, doesn't really make any sense the way you have it, because she is casting a shadow on the ground, but she isn't casting a shadow on herself, if that makes sense. And it's like a really strong shadow, which implies that like she's like got a spotlight on her, which then all of her front of her body would just be black, because or this blue color that you have there. Um, and then the shadow should probably maybe be more like you'd have loads of definition, like you could see her legs and stuff. Like if shadows work when you have this extreme lighting thing. So I think the base, like if you just cover that up, that'd be fine. Um, I think that it's just the way you have the directional lighting on her is like I can see where the light source is coming from, but all the other parts of her are lit by lights coming from other places in the scene, and those lights would fill up the shadow. It would just like you don't always see your shadow. So you could give her a much fainter shadow. So basically, yeah, you could the two approaches are make the shadow that she casts on herself much bright, much darker, or make the shadow on the base more subtle. But like, there's a reason why people don't do it. Do kind of cast shadows on gaming figures like this because it's a nightmare, and it really works with extreme lighting situations. Like I don't know if you had something where she was literally glowing with her like pink neon LEDs, but then you've got a whole other color scheme going on there. And I like what you have now, so I don't think it's necessary. So I'd say if you want to do something where you have a cast shadow by the mini, do something that's like at night and there's like a street light beside her, and then you have an obvious source for it, and then you're kind of having much more area of darkness rather than just kind of like oval patch that's here. It looks more like it's just a kind of dark patch of ground, if that makes any sense to you. Like the way this is lit up, there'd definitely be enough light in the atmosphere to fill up that void, to my mind. Anyway, but it's a super nice looking paint job. Barring that, Jim, what do you think?
Completely agree. Beautiful tones, beautiful contrast. Edge highlights are nice and crispy. Yeah, love the paint job in general. It could have a little bit of more separation in some places. I most notice it like around this leg panel here. Seems to be lacking a little bit. Could go a bit darker around the leather straps. But that's pretty much it really for the scale of it. You could maybe texture this brown bit of the capey cloak thing, and some of the ridges, but it's not. It doesn't really need it, to be honest with you. And then just as Matt said, yeah, unfortunately, it's not the best scale to do cast shadows. It's not the best lighting scheme to do cast shadows. It's not necessary. This isn't the one for it. I would probably just advise to abort the cast shadow on this. And if you're going to try that, as Matt said, like a big thing that's got one very obvious source of light and it is casting very aggressive shadows. You don't need it on something like this, man. You're just giving yourself a headache for no reason. The rest of it is so nicely done, and this is just a big distraction. You don't need it. So yeah, I hope that helps, buddy. But the rest of it is looking really, really good. And I congratulate you due to the scale of this thing. So yeah, very, very nice brush control. Well done. John, thank you very much. Moving up now to Bartos, would appreciate some feedback on the Giant's flesh. I tried to push the contrast and work some color variation to it. Yes, I think we can all tell. That's got a lovely amount of contrast in it. Very, very nice. Love the deep shadows. Love the tones you got going into it. This like 5 o'clock shadow or whatever it's called. There, ruddy, like ready nose and cheeks and ears. It's all very, very nicely done. The thing that stood out to me though was the forehead. For some reason, doesn't. It's got a very abrupt creases into it. I think these could be not quite as dark. That's like your deepest shadow color, the same as like what's right under his armpits or right under his beard or in that crevice in his neck. Whereas realistically, those shadows aren't that strong. I mean, granted, I'm not quite as good looking as this guy, but those aren't that deep. I think that's letting you down a bit there. I'd soften that, and just have a little bit more travel to the top of the head. It's nice that it's the brightest part of it. I think just about that belly's pretty bright. But I think if you relax your eyes and sit back a little bit, I think the attention is coming up to the face just fine. So that's the only thing really for the face. The rest of it's very clean, very smooth, and I love the tones and colours in it. So that's all great. Also the dirty fingernails, cruddy, crusty, gnarly, disgusting. That's all very, very nice. The textures in the fabric are all really, really great. They're working for me very much. Nice how you've done this thing off to the side of the base. Not too big, but it puts him like, it shows just how massive this guy actually is, like in his scale, other than the dude that's hanging off the back of him there. Because there was only one picture, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, there's this hobbit or human that's been yanked from his surroundings and is now being hauled around on the back of this dude. But generally, I haven't got much pushback for you. I think it's really, really beautiful. So, yeah, well done, Bartos. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, skin is very nice. Obviously, put a lot of love into it. Love the use of colors, liver spotting, all the little extra details that we like to see. I think maybe the shadow underneath his man boobs is a little bit stark. If you kind of like, if you look at it too hard, it starts looking like it's like chrome NMM and it's reflecting like the grain or whatever. So maybe just drop it down a little bit. Like it's probably should be the same as the bit under his belly. Although I don't think it really matters, given that it's for like a gaming piece, not like or what have you. No one's going to be coming at it with a spectrophotometer checking. But yeah, I definitely agree with what Jim said that the face is too much area of kind of like 90% brightness. Um, I think the shadows in the forehead should be more like the shadows you've got on the top of his arm there, because again, you're like it is a crease, but it is in an area that's lit, so it shouldn't be so dark. It looks like he's almost like if he had surgical incisions into his head all along there. That's what that would look like. And I think as well, you were thinking like, okay, his face has to be the brightest part, but actually, like he's got this big bald head, so actually he should have the brightest spot should actually be on top because that's where the light's coming from, and then like a few like catching highlights are in there. Uh, so yeah, make sure the brightest light should be on the head, but you should have a little bit more run to it, and like you can go up to an actual very near white for the like this thing here, and I'm not a giant, so there you go. One other thing I found a little bit weird is that he like the 5 o'clock shadow is great, but he has uh like very blue, black, brown kind of stubble, but a big red beard. It looks kind of like he's wearing someone else's hair as like a wig. Uh, I don't know. Well, if I have stubble, it doesn't look like that. I don't know how it works for Giants. Again, I don't think anyone necessarily is gonna care about it too much, apart from me. Uh, and the figure overall, even just accepting the skin, I know the skin looks great. Taking on those points, like the fabric, the patterning on it's great. The texture, I love all the different colors to it. The fact that it's obviously sewn together from different stuff. It's a really great take on this fairly classic Giant. Kind of shows off how cool this model really is, how good it can look when you put in the hard work to make it really sing. So thanks a million, Bartels. Hope that was of help to you. I'm looking forward to seeing more in the future. Okay, Daniel Hinterndorfer, looking at this converted Torox. I'm going to guess it is a Gene Stealer tank. I literally don't know. I could Google it, but I'm not going to. Any issues and the most pressing things that you think with it? Okay, I'm gonna start off with the nice things. This has cool blue and orange contrast. Good job, and it's really clever with the orange dirt, and because obviously it's a Mars or whatever, and then it's kind of a bluish steel thingy. Green headlights. I would maybe push them into slightly more yellow. It's kind of hard to tell. In the back, they look more yellow. I think that looks a little bit better. Um, just so you don't end up having too much colory stuff going on. The yellow, like, and make it up to like a yellow white kind of thing. Um, I really like the shading you've got on all the panels. That's a really great idea. All the little scratches and cuts, making it look super interesting on what could otherwise be a very like plain, boring kind of surface. It looks like in a couple of places though, you kind of airbrushed on your highlights, and you've got this thing where there's one panel here and it has a highlight, and then the next panel on top of it also has a highlight in like the same place. Whereas that wouldn't really happen. It's really obvious on the door, where like the door is lit and then the roof is lit, which can only happen if it's like it just looks like you got an airbrush and sprayed it from this corner. Because obviously you've got a horizontal plane is going to reflect light completely differently to a vertical plane, which is those two things. So when you're doing your panel modulation, try to go from light to dark. Like you have a white line separating them, which is good. But it'll look better if even if it was like the door itself, the domey bit was highlighted, and then the area around it was dark, and then the top part was bright again. Just because it kind of it breaks our suspension of disbelief, where we kind of look at it and go, "Oh, that is painted." Whereas if you have um more kind of dark to light, light to dark, we kind of look at it and go, okay, yeah, that checks out, even if it's not 100% realistic, because pattern modulation is kind of like a bit of an abstraction. Um, Other than that, I didn't notice like you say it's converted. I don't know the model particularly well or at all. I think the conversion work is invisible. I didn't notice anything where I looked at it and went, okay. And that's again speaking as someone who doesn't know it, which is actually the best point of view, really, because obviously if you know what the model is supposed to look like, you're going to pick up on conversions, but like because you know what it looks like on the box. Love the corrosion on the bodywork, the way that kind of blends in with the dust and the rust and everything. I like the like textured look to the steel. Um, it's just a really, really, really nice vehicle. So, um, probably yeah. The main thing I would do look out for is the way you apply your panel modulation and then the lights because they look just a bit painted kind of thing. Like you might be better off having them not be on, to be honest with you, because again, you've got this kind of issue we were talking about earlier where the model is lit and its headlights are on and you can see the glow from the headlights. Like if you turn the headlights on in your car during the daytime, they don't light up anything because the sunlight is already doing that. Um, so yeah, you could have them like maybe have like a shadow and just have the dim kind of bulb part lit up. But again, that's like super minor. No one's gonna actually care about that if it's for your army or whatever. But I think it looks very good as is. Also, minor is a pun there by accident. Jim, do you want to add anything there?
I was agreeing with everything you were saying all along. I can't tell whether it's supposed to be modulation or a paint job. But to me, I don't think it really matters because I think it looks really cool. Simple as that. I actually quite like the effect on the lights. I get what Matt's saying, and he's right in that they wouldn't cast that much of an effect, really. But I like what you've done with it. How you've put like the little shadow. Where's that picture? Where's that picture? Where's that picture? There's like the tiny little shadow between the two. I think that's a really nice job that you did there. But yeah, I don't think it looks too bad with having the fluorescent lights on. It could kind of, sell us some necrotic technology that it's just so outrageously bright. Yeah, it does have a little glowy effect on that, even when the thing is in daylight. So I think you're just about getting away with it. Also, thoroughly enjoying like however you weathered these tires. Like that looks amazing. So great job on that, and just having it just creeping into some of the areas, but not all over it. It gives them a good idea of the scale of this thing. How even when it's plundering through the dusty environment, stuff will get up, but it's not this thing's so big that it's not getting all the way up there. I tried to do something similar with a tank just recently, and I think you've done a wonderful job of keeping it sort of cleaner on top, dirtier down the bottom. And again, can't spot anywhere where the conversion has taken place. So great success all around, I think. I don't think I could pick anything else out that Matt's not already said. So nice one, Daniel. Looks great. Thank you very much. Okay, Torga finally finished Archeon. Been working on him since November. Oh, toil. Fair play. I'd like some comments on the overall paint job, but mostly on the gold NMM, especially the heat that found difficult. This is the second attempt at NMM on a model. Okay, so let's get in and have a look. So I think it's almost there. It just needs some more of the ochre-y midtones on it. It's kind of similar to the bone, not helping that the bone is literally bolted on to the gold. But I think you're getting along in like where you've placed the highlights and like the gamut, like the travel of the colors, is all pretty good. I think there's good colors in there. I just think you need more of the mid-tone for the gold to really, really sell. It's the same on this sword handle here thing. Good colors, good travel. There's just too much of the the darkness, it's good that it's there, but there's too much shadow in it. It's not often we say that actually with NMM, is it, that you've got too much shadow? But on this occasion, I think that is the case. So yeah, punch up some more of the mid-tones, and I think it will start looking a lot better. The shield isn't really selling as well. This bit up here, these trims at the top work better. How you've got the travel, how it goes from light to dark, but the way that the light to dark transitioning is happening on here isn't really selling, because it's kind of, the points of the spear things are all reasonably dark, and then you've got like a kind of a bright highlight here, and then another one. It's just not enough. It's not linear enough, I don't think, in that the blends are just kind of playing across the surface in a way that wouldn't really happen in real life. So it's kind of making it look like it's got like a bulge in the middle of it. So yeah, it's a tricky shape, and I'm trying to imagine now how I would do it. But just play around with the highlights a little more. Try and have some more highlights going through it. I think that would really help. And don't have all of these tips dark. I think that would also help it out as well. Try and brighten up some of these, because it looks a bit too deliberate. Those are all dark. But yeah, I think for a second attempt at NMM, it's not bad at all. So just more mid-tones, push around some of the reflections, play around with the placement of them, and see how you get on with that. But yeah, for a second attempt, it's looking pretty good. Moving on to the horse. I really like what you've done. It's a good glow cast that you've done off of the eye. I'm really liking that. And these like bony protrusions coming out, they're selling well as like wounds. They could have a little bit less white on them. I think the bones. It's nice that you've got the striation in there, but it could use more of a like the creamy off white, like bone color, if you like, and just save the brightness for like the very tips of it. I like what you've done with the black armor as well. That's selling really, really well. You've got some great great tones and travel in this armor. I think it's more successful than the gold was. So just apply some of the values that you've applied in that black armor, and you'll be well on your way. I also like what you've done with the cape. That's really nice. You've got some good travel in there. A little bit more texture would probably help it out as well, but you don't absolutely need it, to be honest with you. This gold's looking good on the back here. That's nice. Just broaden out the mid-tones a little bit more, shrink these dark shadows a bit. And that'll be looking really, really sweet. And also, I like what you did with the base. That's cool, like with the cracked earth thing and the fire in there. That effect is really, really selling. I don't really care why there's bones sticking out of the floor, but they look good. Just careful of the tufts, again, as we've said before. These look like they were just stuck on, so push some washes in them, dry brush them, and also they're very symmetrically placed, in that corner, in that corner, in that corner. So try to avoid patterns. It's difficult because the brain likes to find patterns. It's what it does very, very naturally and very, very well. So don't just stick tufts in the corners of the base. It just doesn't sell. Try and like wrestle them into the cracks of the rock, tuck them in, try and make it a bit more random, because that's very sort of sequential, just one in each corner. And then just overall for the thing, I think you've got a good level of contrast in it, nice shadows, nice highlights. So yeah, on the whole, I think it's looking pretty damn good from that respect. So yeah, I hope you find that helpful, mate. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, second go for NMM, like great work. Keep pushing it. Takes practice. I think back the helmet, definitely the most successful bit on the gold. It's definitely reading as like a shiny material. I think you get your highlights placed pretty much spot on. Face is more of a challenge. It's kind of like an awkward shape, obviously, with these things. Often it's good to have like a direction to your light, well, I can imagine direction to it. So you can have one half his face be brighter, one be darker. Definitely not making it easy for yourself with the horns and the skull all being kind of in a similar palette kind of thing. So yeah, like if you had really bright highlights here, like one side of his face mate slit thing was lit up, that would do it a bit better, and the kind of shadow areas a bit too big. I think as well on the shield, you've got too much black, because obviously gold, when you see a shadow on metal, it's a reflection of something that's dark in the environment. It's not, and gold is going to tint everything kind of yellow because it is yellow. Whereas the points of your chaos star thing almost look like they've been burned, if that makes sense, and then it's just kind of done in the edges. This shape though is an utter nightmare. Like this is why I spent hours shaving it off all of my Chaos Warriors because you want to paint it like it's kind of pyramids or whatever, and have shadows, but it's actually just a flat panel, so it has to be like panel modulated. But then it has all these weird irregular shapes beaten into it. So there's just not many great ways of doing it. I kind of like how you got this stripe going along down here, but yeah, if you just didn't have, think of it like an overall, like it was a sheet of metal, where would the lights be? They definitely wouldn't be in each of the corners. That wouldn't make a huge amount of sense. Uh, and then, as Jim said, the blue steel armor looks good. I think that the sword could have more white to it because it's looking like it's blue. Um, like the armor, I kind of feel like it looks like it's kind of enameled metal, like it's metal that's been painted, has a blue treatment to it, or it's some kind of bluish, black blue steel. Whereas the sword blade seems like it should be like more like normal steel. So adding more white in basically all of your highlights and making them a bit bigger, or making the midtone, shrink the shadows, make the midtone wider, and then add highlights on top of that to have it look like it's reflecting light as opposed to just being blue. And then maybe the center of the flaming mouth thing could be a bit brighter as well. But like, I think that's it's more to taste. Um, yeah, really cool go on Archeon. Like, good job, you know, standing up and saying, I'm going to do Archeon in NMM. He's a super cool, iconic model, and not easy to pull off at all to this kind of standard. Totally understand how much effort and hassle was involved in all of that. So, thanks a million for submitting. Hope that was of help to you, and look forward to seeing more in the future. And good luck on your painting journey, wherever it may take you. Not to the end times, we hope. Um, last one. Mark Knowles. Excuse me. Blood Bowl Nurgle Bloater. Team is about paint effects, like many Nurgle things are, all crusty grossness. Trying a lot of new things. What came off well? What to improve for next? Cool. Always good to try new things. Nurgle, obviously, very particular painting style. Um, it's a cool model. Blood Bowl obviously gives you a good opportunity to try stuff out as well. Um, so yeah, like I like the skin. It's got that horrible kind of blotchiness to it, which works very well. The whole model looks like it was painted with kind of washes and contrasty stuff, which again works for this kind of you want coffee stain and irregularity to it. Um, so good job. His horrible jam stomach thing there looks really good, like it's a mouth or in his belly or something. It's disgusting in all the right ways. I think the armor looks quite good. I like how it looks like it was painted blue at some point, and then it all kind of like fell off or got rusted away in various kind of stages. Um, I'm not. I like that his helmet's white because it kind of makes him have more of a face, and he looks kind of puzzled the way he's tilting his head at you. But like, I'm not super sure if it's meant to be. It was blue originally, and it all got washed away, or the blue on it is verdigreed in. I don't think it really matters that much. Um, I mean, if they all have white helmets, I think it works fine. Um, and the pants are very, very white, which I'm not sure they should be, given how like they look like he's been wearing them for like 20 minutes because he's so gross, and they were like perfectly white before that. I think maybe just a different color would be better. Like, I wouldn't be kitting out these guys in white pants. Like, if you did them in like kind of blue denim looking things, because then you have a nice thing where you've got the boots, all the leathers are this kind of orangey color, and you'd have this blue and orange going on, which you already have with the helmet. But I just think I don't know about the white. Like, white is not a super interesting color anyway. You always want to add stuff to it. It can be quite awkward to paint. And given that he's so dirty, like, it should be, what is it, Screaming Skull or something is the highest. Like, it should be this very yellow parchmenty white. And then maybe the edges, I don't even know if they'd have white to them, then they'd probably be more crusty and like gross around them. I do like how you've got the blood drips and all the other stains and stuff, and obviously white kind of showcases that. But you could still do that on something else, and you could have like old stains where it's like, you know, something that's dried in and no one is going to clean it out, that kind of thing. And then fresher ones where it's still wet and gross. And good job putting a name on there. I assume that must be like printed in some way. It's very, very, very tidy. So yeah, overall, very cool scheme. Really like the corrosion and the verdigris and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, Jim, do you want to add anything on there?
Really enjoying the leathers. Nice tones in the leather. It just looks like, I'm not sure if this is contrast or wash, but it looks like it's pulled a little excessively in some places. So just either watch out for that next time if you're not too fast, or just smooth it out a little bit. It's just in a couple of places, like on the side of that foot there. I agree about the white pants. To be honest, they look a bit too crisp. Daz has definitely been worth every penny in this household, and that is a very unfortunate toilet accident. But it looks like they should be a lot grubbier than they are. If they are going to be white, then they need to be much more ruinous, as per the armor and as per the flesh. You could add some more sort of texture to the leather as well. Just scratch it up a little bit in some places. So whatever the highest highlight was, just super thin, random as you can, different sizes, different directions. Concentrate towards edges as well, where there's obvious edges. That could help as well. But I really like what you did with the flesh. That looks rank. So great job. And then on the base, just two things. One would be to vary the tuft a little bit with some dry brushing and shades, as we've said many times already. And secondly, it looks like the coverage hasn't quite got full opacity on the white side of things. So if you could just do another couple of coats on that, that would be cool. And then that should be sound then, I reckon. Just a little bit of that blue showing through from underneath. But yeah, the corrosion's really cool. And I like the scheme overall with the orange and the blue, as Matt said. That looks great. So yeah, nice one. It'd be cool to see all the others as well, actually, when they get done. So yeah, thank you very much, Mark. And that's it, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks for sticking till the end of the video. Most importantly, thanks to everyone for submitting their models so that we can review them. We hope we've given you something to think about to help you take that next step on your hobby journey. We definitely appreciate it's not easy to put your models out there on display for the whole world. And thank you as well for all the immense effort that was clearly put into them all together. So if you're interested in submitting your own model for the PmP review, head on to Facebook, Google it. It's open for this month now, and we look forward to seeing you in future videos.